Matt Damon. Your days are numbered, Matt Damon. Agent Krueger's coming for you.
I'll find you! I'll hunt you down!
Gentlemen, could you imagine living to 184 years old? Not just living to 184 years, but being a young and in the prime of your life body while being 184 years old. What would that do to the psyche of a man? What sort of person would you become? Today on Bureau Files, we're taking a look at Agent Kruger from the movie Elysium. In 2013, the movie Elysium is dropped, a movie directed by Neil Blomkamp, starring Matt Damon. A budget of $115 million, and it made $286 million. The movie had a heavy undertone of a political nature, that being the rich have all the good stuff, the poor don't. I don't care. I enjoyed Neil Blomkamp's sci-fi world building, and I think he, as always, does an excellent job in the sci-fi genre. Please God, let him direct the Halo. Anything Halo. Just give Halo. It's Neil Blomkamp or nothing. I guess Christopher Nolan might be. Anyway. Now in Elysium, Sharlto Copley plays the antagonist, and he plays a rather interesting character. He was a veteran of the 3-2 Battalion, turned immortal. Now I found an interview with Mr. Copley, and he stated that Kruger was supposed to be English, but instead he made him a South African, basing him on a member of the 3-2 Battalion. Now, what is the 3-2 Battalion, you may ask? And we are going down the historic rabbit hole for a moment. Now, the 3-2 Battalion was an elite light infantry battalion founded in 1975. An example of how elite the 3-2 Battalion was is that on May 21st of 1980, the Battle of Savate, 270 men engaged Fapla and killed or wounded over 500 enemy combatants. Now, if we look at the American military, the usual doctrine is that a numerically superior number attacks a numerically smaller number that is defending anything. It helps with keeping people alive. Well, the 3-2 Battalion had less people and still overwhelmed the enemy. Now, the 3-2 Battalion history is rather interesting, though it is laced with controversy. They were an organization focused on fighting communism, but they were under the apartheid era regime. I think an interest that comes from it is that you have this elite military unit, there's the controversy and the politics surrounding it, and then you also have such little coverage of it in the Western realm of influence. Like growing up in school, I didn't really ever learn about any sort of South African history. So all of that history, it's kind of like there's a whole nother world out there where you just don't know what you don't know. And so when you go down these rabbit holes, you unpack a whole new level and thread of the historical narrative or the historical happenings of something that may just be kind of foreign to you. Now, it's no doubt that an elite unit is always good for show business. It makes characters more interesting. And the 3-2 Battalion doesn't really have that many former members popping up as fictional characters on the silver screen, especially in Western media. What I mean by that is that another 3-2 Battalion member, Danny Archer, 2006 Blood Diamond, there's Kruger, of course, 2013 Elysium, and then there's Colonel Jan Cohorst from 2023 movie Freelance. I didn't see it, but it has John Cena, which is a bold character casting choice because how do you even see him in the movie? Now, I like when movies make characters come from an elite military background. I even like it more when they can create a character that comes from an obscure elite military background, one like the 3-2 Battalion. It adds a level of political controversy. This person may have been fighting under the apartheid regime, but he was a member of an elite military unit. Now, in the 3-2 Battalion, it was a mixed unit. There was both black and white soldiers enlisted and officers in the 3-2 Battalion. It's kind of like in Blood Diamond when he's like, there's no apartheid in the foxholes.
There's no apartheid in the foxhole. The colonel always used to tell us that.
Interesting. Now, getting to Kruger, he was a gentleman born in 1970. At the time the movie took place in 2154, that would have made him 184 years old. It's a weird thing to think about because his family and friends were all products of a completely different era. For instance, if it would be like today in 2024, there would be like an elite soldier running around that was born in 1840. that dude would be canceled so quick.
Boy, can you get me a cup of joe? I'm literally freezing my nuts off here.
What did he just say to me?
Now, I think that's a pretty cool concept from a sci-fi perspective, taking someone and keeping the aging process away, keeping them in the prime of their life because they were so good at whatever they did, and they can run around and be a goon of the state. I think that is a fun dynamic. Good heavens, what is all this modern gizmos? Now, in Kruger's biography on the web, he's recruited into the CCB, the Civil Cooperation Bureau. Bureau. You're in a coma, wake up. You're in a coma, wake. Now, I will say, I do love me some corpo, bureaucratic sounding names. Clearly, I do. So I do love the name of the Civil Cooperation Bureau because I guarantee you it was anything but civil. Kruger was recruited in the year 2042. That would have made him 72 years old. POV, you are Agent Kruger, and Matt Damon has been recast to Bureau Files. You're welcome. Now, one thing I wanted to clarify on with Agent Kruger is his employment with the CCB. I originally said he was employed by the CCB in 2042 at the age of 70-something. Now, this is technically true, but he's also a contractor who is hired out by the CCBs.
Activate Kruger.
So in some ways, yeah, he's employed by the CCB, but in other ways he's a contractor, depending on how you want to look at things. Employment, if we go like W-2 or 1099, it does change the dynamic of your working relationship with a company or with a corporation or with the Bureau, the Civil Cooperation Bureau, or with Bureau Files, the guy holding the camera. Now, why I bring that up is because he is contracted out and he's a part of the Oryx Warfare Group. Now, on the wiki, it says that he is the leader of the Oryx Warfare Group, but doesn't really expand on how much of a leader he is. It's safe to assume that the two other guys that pick him up, being other South Africans,
Hey boss, we got a runner.
and in the Oryx Warfare Mercenary Group, that he is senior to them, or their leader, right? They refer to him as boss. Now, I know that that's often like a nickname, it's a, hey, what's up, boss? But it's also like another thing where they could genuinely mean it too. It's a 2-for-1, obvious examples. Now, I'm not sure if that wiki is trying to imply if he's the CEO leader of the Oryx Warfare Group, which wouldn't make that much sense given the fact that you don't often see CEOs running around on the field like that if it was a mercenary group, because they have to worry about the bigger picture of the operation. And who knows how large the Oryx Warfare Group is, if maybe it's a small offshoot of just these guys, or if it's a much larger organization that has its roots in South Africa. I don't know, I couldn't tell you, we're just going off of what info I have from the movie Elysium. Now, the Oryx Warfare Group's logo is the Gemsbok, a antelope creature from South Africa, and or maybe Africa in general. I'm not a biologist, I'm just spitballing, shooting from the hip, brother. And of course, the Oryx Warfare Group has a very distinct South African feel, maybe even playing on the whole trope of South African mercenaries. It's cool, I dig it. Now, I have a fun theory. Kruger would have been 23 in 1993 when the 3-2 Battalion was disbanded. The 3-2 Battalion was a popular pool to recruit from for the mercenary company Executive Outcomes. Executive Outcomes. You're in a coma, wake up. Your family loves you. Get out of it. Get out of there right now, hurry. This means that not only Kruger could have served with Danny Archer in the 3-2 Battalion, but they could have been employed by Executive Outcomes together at the same time, and maybe even Kruger was there chasing Danny Archer down in the Sierra Leone diamond mining fields. Now, of course, that is just a theory. A game theory! Now, Executive Outcomes closed down shop in 1999. Kruger would have been 29 years old. Still a young man in the prime of his life, looking for more employment. And in 1999, it's hard to say what Kruger would have gone on to do. Maybe he could have returned to the SADF and continued life on as a soldier. Maybe he stays in the private sector, continuing mercenary work with another company. Hell, he could have gone on to work for Eric Prince and Blackwater. We don't know. This part of his life really isn't documented in the wiki, and it's not really covered anywhere else that I could have found. It's leading up to a lot of speculation. In my mind, I think he went off to some sort of job that he was still paid to carry a gun. Now, funny enough, Eben Barlow brought back Executive Outcomes in the year 2020. So maybe by that point, Kruger would have been 50, so he goes off and he joins Executive Outcomes yet again. He would have been an older gentleman. Typically, 50-year-olds aren't running around doing high-speed cool guy stuff, typically. If you do see those guys, be very leery of them because they will absolutely wreck your world. Because there's a whole saying where it's like, be weary of a old man in an occupation where men typically die young. Hell yeah, brother. Now, in 2042, Kruger, at the ripe age of 72, gets the job with the CCB. Now, this is something that I was thinking about where they must have offered him something rather juicy, rather enticing for Kruger to want to join the CCB, and I truly think it was the access to the movie's medbays. So another thing I was pontificating about with the Oryx Warfare group is his two other henchmen. I would assume those guys were also maybe along the same vein or cut from the same cloth as Agent Kruger. Maybe they are also in the same Immortal style vibe, being mercenaries, having the experience in the SADF, maybe going on to be mercenaries after and executive outcomes, and then they were a part of a pool that was taken and turned young again to be hired out as a military wing of the CCB. There was some hints and references that these guys made to Agent Kruger that shows that they've been doing this for a while. Remember that cack in India when he lost his legs? That's when they're putting Kruger into the medbay after he got his face jacked up by the grenade that Matt Damon had when they got inside the Raven. So it shows that these guys have been all over the world and have done a lot of stuff, and that's to be expected with them living for such long lives. Now, it's not 100% that Kruger's agents that he worked with were these guys like him. I would assume so, given that he is very preferential to them. During my research for the Oryx Warfare group and for Elysium in general, there's just not a lot of info. There's not like a book that's already predated this so that I could go and pull from, and even if there was, given my track record on this channel, who's to say that I even would, typically because I like to go off the info given in the movies. That being said, for something like this, I would actually dive into a book to see if I can get more info off of the Oryx Warfare group and or Agent Kruger and or the Elysium lore in general, but alas, I don't believe that exists. Or I'm just that bad at researching, which is also a massive possibility and or truth. What is this channel? Now, in the movie Elysium, they have these things called medbays. They are essentially like an ex machina device that keep you immortal. In the movie, they can scan and cure diseases, fix broken bones, aging, hairline, brother, I might need that soon, facial wrinkles, and rebuilding fatal injuries. And they also reverse the process of aging, essentially making those that have access to the medbays immortal. Now, I could see the CCB looking at Kruger's resume, wanting to have some sort of goon of the state and saying, hey, you're looking down the end of your years of life, who knows, the wear and tear on your body. We can reverse the process of aging and make you young again. You just got to sign the dotted line and be a new goon of the state, and we'll keep you young. I do gotta address this. It's kind of a side tangent, but the med bays are supposed to be like a symbol of economic disparity and how the rich are privileged and yada, yada, yada. I get it. I know when we get into like the whole talking about movies, there's like the kids that like to come out and be like, well, actually, this is a metaphor for something much deeper and your little stupid brain would never understand. And to those people, I say, you did not get bullied hard enough in high school. Where was Flash Thompson to bully you in high school? They were supposed to do a better job to course correct your nerdiness. Trust me, brother, whatever sort of advanced film theory that you know ain't gonna get you laid. Girls don't care about that stuff. Unless you can make a lot of money with your advanced film theory, they just don't care. Now, to be fair, I will say that in 2013, they were coming off of a lot of economic turmoil. There was a 2008 financial crisis. I was 12 years old running around playing Call of Duty. I did not have the coin to buy up all the cheap houses that were for sale. What was I doing with my life? Then there was movements such as Occupy Wall Street. I remember there was the imagery of very rich people being on balconies, laughing and drinking champagne, looking on at the protesters. Now, this is something I could see maybe Neil even seeing and thinking, oh, this could be some level of inspiration for where Elysium wanted to go. Now, in this video, I guess where some of the inspiration may have seeped into the movie, but it's yet again speculation. Where this movie really was inspired from was Neil Blomkamp's experience getting arrested down in Mexico. That experience would be the catalyst that would be the idea for the movie itself of Elysium. Important details. You're welcome. Now, all that political undertone and commentary, yet again, I kind of don't care. I like to shut my brain off and enjoy a cool sci-fi movie, and I think Neil made a cool sci-fi movie. The guns, the tech, the spacecraft, the these criminals having access to old guns with updated modernized tech, you know, using AKMs that have 30 cal airburst rounds to fight off these automatic drone robot thingies that are going to try and melt you with their cool high-speed guns. I like all of that. I think that is a really fun world-building thing, and I think Neil, like usual, always crushes it. District 9, Chappie, Elysium. He makes really good sci-fi movies. Now, from 2042 until 2126, I don't have much information on Kruger's whereabouts, what he was doing for the CCB. Now, a fun little side tangent, yet again, is that Kruger's agent name is actually Agent 32 Alpha 21 Bravo. Now, I couldn't decipher, I asked around on the webs, what that possibly could have represented. It could be his designator number, the area he works, but I think that there was some kind of Easter egg with the name because he's Agent 32 Alpha, so it's kind of like 32 Battalion. 21B, it could be like a reference to May 21st with the Battle of Savate, because in the 32 Battalion, that's like a well-known holiday. And then B, you know, maybe Bravo Group was one of the originating groups that started and helped found the 32 Battalion. So maybe that's some of like the Easter egging that they were trying to put into the movie, and I think that's kind of a fun little detail to try and pontificate about. Now, Kruger would end up working for the CCB for 112 years. So this is where my fascination for this subject in the video kind of sparked, was thinking about how much time goes into Kruger's life and what he would have experienced. Because on the surface level, you look at this guy and you just see like an antagonistic character, a bad guy. And I think it's really fun to try and dissect and kind of break down, like, there's a lot to this guy, and he's actually a pretty fascinating character. But could you imagine working a job at the same job for 112 years? That is insane. Like, at some point, you gotta luck out with some kind of investment. You gotta hit it off in the S&P 500. You gotta crush it with Bitcoin, some kind of poo-poo PP crypto coin. At some point, one of your investments in the course of 112 years has to take off so you can retire and not have to work at the same job for 112 years. I get antsy doing the same job for like 2 years. I don't know how you could do it for 112 years. So that really kind of narrowed it down to where it's like Kruger's got to be either really bad with money, gets medbay as a form of payment, or he loves his job. That's like really like the big three options, or maybe all of the above. I have no idea. Now in the year 2126 is when we get record of signs of trouble from Agent Kruger. April 2126, misuse of military weapons for illegal purposes as participating in a robbery. Yet again, dog, why are you participating in robbery? You're 156 years old. You gotta grow up. You should be super retired by now. You're working 112 years. Maybe you start off the job at like $100,000 a year, but at some point you gotta be like upgrading through the pay scales to be making buku bucks to where you can just retire off of like interest and investments. I don't get it. Like, was the medbay just like all they paid these guys with? Like, hey, we're not gonna pay you, but you get to be immortal. Do you want to come be our military arm of the CCB? Like, yeah, dude, come on. Like, if I was working for 112 years at the same job, at some point you got to become like the CEO. So Kruger's rap sheet, I don't know if I'll go through it all, but it really does consist of crime and or grape, depending on how YouTube will be mad at me if I say that. There's signs that Kruger is deteriorating and becoming evil. Now, I make this video not to glorify Kruger, right? This isn't a video where it's like, wow, Kruger was really cool. I mean, he was objectively pretty cool, but he's not like a good guy. His aesthetic, his look, his martial skill, I think it's objectively cool and interesting, but who he is as a person and what he became, definitely evil. You can look at that and grasp that from a moral standpoint. I think it's a fascinating thought exercise in thinking of what would happen to you if you lived well beyond your natural life and well beyond your natural life as a young man in the prime of your life. In the movie, Kruger's not like in his 20s. He looks like he's in his 30s to early 40s. Still though, it's not like he's running around like a 72-year-old at the age they recruited him into the CCB. Now, I do think there is something that happens to men when they live too long, and there is evidence of this in the Bible, biblical text of Genesis. Now, in the Bible of Genesis 5:3, there's a list of people that have lived very long lives. The Bible. That's the word for me. Adam lived 930 years and then he died. Seth lived 912 years and then he died. Enosh lived 905 years and then he died. Kenan lived 910 years and then he died. Jared lived 962 years, and then he died. Enoch got to 365 years, and then God took him. He never died. Methuselah lived 969 years, and then he died. Lamech lived 777 years, and then he died. So clearly in the Bible, there is evidence of people living a really long time. Now, if you believe in the Bible or not, that's up to you. I don't control your personal beliefs, but there is an interesting thing that happens in the Bible where before the flood, these people were living very, very long lives. Now, the descendants of Cain, I think, were the ones that would become the evil offshoot branch of line of people that would commit very great heinous sins. Sins so terrible that God in the Bible deemed them worthy to hit the reset button with a massive flood, sparing only that of Noah and his family. And it's kind of interesting to think because, I mean, we think of all the evil in the world today, horrific things that you can imagine. Your brain probably would be broken if it truly knew what was going on to the extent and level of evil in the world, and yet we have not had another great flood. So if we apply the logic of what we see in biblical texts, and if we also take examples from other media like Altered Carbon, and we apply that to Agent Krueger, what he's experiencing is may just being chasing the next high, and it's leading him down a darker and darker path. The crimes on his rap sheet were pretty bad. There were some ones that it was like, hey man, you gotta face the wall now. We can't let you live. Trying to get inside of Agent Krueger's head, you gotta think the dude's over 100 plus years old. He's got over 100 years of combat experience. He has the latest and greatest military technology. He's probably starting to think to himself that, hey, why am I not in a better position in life? Maybe because he's bad with investments. But he's also thinking, I could probably get away with whatever I want to. Who is going to stop me? Now, when it comes to combat experience, Agent Krueger has no shortage. He easily is going to have over 164 years of getting paid to carry a gun. Stress inoculation in the line of work where you're getting paid to carry a firearm and expected to employ that firearm is a massively important thing. A personal example I can give you is I was just a police officer for 2 years. I was expected to be carrying a firearm on my job. I'd get in trouble if I showed up to work without a gun. Now, in that job, when I first hit the street as a rookie beat cop, do you know how great I did? Not great. I sucked. On high stress situations when I first started, I would get this thing called tunnel vision, where you only see a certain thing in front of you and you really hyper focus on one thing and you don't step back and see the bigger picture. Now, towards the end of my career, I'm not saying I was some sort of badass, but I was definitely a lot more functioning and could see and diagnose what was going on a lot easier. I didn't get tunnel vision as easy in high stress situations. I started to see them as kind of boring now. Oh, there's a dude with a gun. Okay, well, I got a solution for that. It's called a rifle, and we're going to clear this tactically and do it safely. So that was just over a course of 2 years. I went from being very low stress inoculation to having a very high stress inoculation. Really good life lessons, and I learned a lot. Now, if we take this and apply that to Agent Krueger over the span of 164 years of potentially getting paid to carry a gun, nothing is going to faze that dude. He's never going to have a day at work where he's like, whoa, I haven't seen that one before. The statistical probability of him being fazed by anything is extremely low. And he's also armed to the teeth with futuristic weapons tech. He's probably just going to melt them with like a phaser beam or whatever. So it kind of puts it into perspective because Matt Damon's character is like a 30-something street criminal who ends up getting a terminal illness and is just trying to get to a med bay. Doesn't have the same level of combat experience as Agent Krueger. Him winning and besting Agent Krueger in a combative situation is a literal miracle. That's like David versus Goliath. It's like divine intervention. That's not supposed to happen. Agent Krueger carries around a katana. You know how sick that is? Now, ultimately, I will say there is an excellent life lesson about Agent Krueger. He may have not started his life as a villain, but he certainly died as one.